My sister Claire stood at our mother's graveside reception, champagne flute raised high, and announced her engagement to the man she'd been secretly dating for 6 months. While Mom's casket was still being lowered into the ground an hour earlier, Claire had already started planning her future with money that was supposed to be mine. The gathered mourners fell silent, some gasping audibly at the timing. I set down my untouched coffee and walked to the parking lot without saying a word. Hi, I'm Margaret, 35. I'm a retired school administrator, the younger of two daughters, and the one who spent the last 3 years caring for our mother through her battle with Alzheimer's. I thought family loyalty meant something in our house, but I was learning that some people see devotion as weakness. Let me tell you how I discovered that my sister had been playing a much longer game than I ever imagined. Before we dive into the story, let me learn a bit about you. If you're a charming lady, please leave the number 1 in the comments, and if you're a dashing gentleman, leave the number 2. This way I can send you a special greeting. Now, let's start the story together. The morning after Mom's funeral, I sat in my kitchen staring at the stack of condolence cards and trying to process what Claire had done. For 3 years, I had been the primary caregiver while Claire lived her life 2 states away, visiting maybe twice a year with expensive gifts that made her look generous to Mom's friends. I had taken early retirement at 58 to move in with Mom, managing her medications, her appointments, her increasing confusion and fear. Claire would call weekly, always cheerful, always asking how our dear mother was doing, always mentioning how hard it must be for me. Mom had always favored Claire. Even as children, Claire got the bigger bedroom, the later curfew, the benefit of the doubt when something went wrong. Claire has such big dreams, Mom would say when my sister changed majors for the third time in college. Margaret is so steady she'll always land on her feet, she'd add, as if being reliable was consolation for being overlooked. When Dad died 12 years ago, Claire flew in for the funeral and left the next day. I handled the estate, the house sale, everything. Thank goodness for Margaret, everyone said, patting my shoulder while Claire received the hugs and the sympathy. But I genuinely loved Mom, and when the diagnosis came, there was never a question in my mind about who would step up. Claire sent flowers and called it such a blessing that Margaret is available to help. Available. As if I hadn't sacrificed my final working years, my savings, my social life, my dating prospects, everything to make sure Mom was comfortable and safe. As if it was my natural role to fade into the background while Claire continued building her career in marketing, traveling, posting photos of wine tastings and weekend getaways. The phone call came at 7:30 that morning. Claire's voice was bright and energetic, the way it always was when she was pleased with herself. Maggie, I wanted to talk to you about Mom's arrangements before you start going through her things. She had always called me Maggie, even though I'd asked her repeatedly to use Margaret. It was a small thing, but it was part of how she diminished me, made me seem younger, less serious. I've already started, I said carefully. The lawyer said we need to inventory everything for probate. Oh, well, actually, there might not be much to inventory. There was something in her voice, a false casualness that made my stomach tight. I mean, Mom and I had been talking about simplifying things over the past year. You know how she worried about being a burden. Mom had never once, not even in her worst moments, referred to herself as a burden. She was proud, sometimes frustratingly so. I set down my coffee cup. What do you mean simplifying? Well, she wanted to make sure her affairs were in order. You know how she was about planning ahead, so she asked me to help her set up some accounts, make some transfers. She was so worried about leaving you with a mess to deal with. Claire's voice was getting that syrupy quality it took on when she was building up to something big. She transferred most of her savings to a joint account with me last year. For tax purposes, you understand. And she signed over the house deed too. She wanted everything to be clean and simple. The kitchen floor seemed to tilt under my feet. She what? Oh, Maggie, I know it sounds confusing, but it was all Mom's idea. She was still sharp when we did it, you know that. This was last February, remember? She had that good week where she seemed almost like her old self. She called me specifically to talk about her finances. She said she didn't want to burden you with legal complexities while you were already doing so much for her care. February, I remembered that week. Mom had indeed seemed clearer, more focused. She had asked me to drive her to the bank, said she needed to take care of some paperwork. I had waited in the car, reading a magazine, grateful for an easy errand. She had been gone for over an hour, longer than usual, but she had seemed pleased when she came back out. Just some old business to tidy up, she had said. You were there, I said slowly, at the bank in February. Well, yes, she asked me to fly in to help. She didn't want to worry you with the details. You were already so stressed about her condition. She thought it would be easier if I handled the financial side of things while you focused on her day-to-day care. Claire's voice had that reasonable, patient tone she used when she was explaining why she was actually the thoughtful one, why her choices were really for everyone's benefit. I was quiet for so long that Claire finally said, Maggie, are you there? I know this is a lot to process, especially right after yesterday. But I wanted you to know so you wouldn't be surprised when you talked to the lawyer. How much? My voice came out as a whisper. How much what? How much money did she transfer to your account? Claire paused. It's not really about the amount, Maggie. It's about what Mom wanted. She was very clear about her intentions. How much, Claire? About 230,000. Her CDs, her savings, most of the money from Dad's life insurance that she never touched. But Maggie, you have to understand, this was her decision. She was worried about estate taxes, about the house going through probate. She wanted to make sure everything was protected. $230,000. Money that I had assumed would be split between us, money that represented some small compensation for the years I had given up, the retirement I had spent, the life I had put on hold. Money that was now sitting in an account with Claire's name on it. And the house, I managed to ask. The house is in my name now, yes, but Maggie, I'm not going to just throw you out. We can work something out. Maybe you could rent it or we could sell it and split the proceeds. I mean, you've been living there rent-free for 3 years. That's worth something too. Living there rent-free. While I cleaned up after Mom's accidents, managed her medications, held her hand through the panic attacks, researched memory care facilities, interviewed home health aides, spent my own savings on groceries and utilities and countless small necessities that insurance didn't cover, rent-free. I need to go, I said. Maggie, wait, I know this is overwhelming, but I really think Mom did the right thing. She was protecting both of us. And honestly, you're probably going to want to downsize anyway, right? Start fresh somewhere new? This gives you the freedom to do that. I hung up without saying goodbye. My hands were shaking as I set the phone down. For a moment, I sat in the absolute silence of Mom's kitchen, surrounded by her things, her coffee mugs, her little ceramic rooster collection on the windowsill, the calendar where I had marked all her doctor appointments in blue ink. Everything here was going to be Claire's to decide about. Everything I had cared for, maintained, preserved through Mom's illness was going to be sorted through by my sister, who would see dollar signs instead of memories. But it was more than the money, more than the house. It was the calculation of it all. Claire had flown in during Mom's good week, when she was lucid and scared and probably easily convinced that she was being a burden on me. Claire had taken advantage of that window of clarity to secure her own future while positioning herself as the helpful daughter, the one who understood legal complexities, the one who was protecting everyone. I walked through the house, room by room, seeing it differently now. The hardwood floors I had kept polished, the garden I had maintained, the bathroom I had modified with grab bars and a shower seat, the bedroom where I had spent countless nights listening for Mom's movements, ready to help if she became confused or frightened. All of it was Claire's now. In Mom's bedroom, I opened the small fireproof safe where she kept her important papers. Her will was there, dated 8 years ago, clearly stating that everything should be divided equally between Claire and me. But wills don't matter when assets have already been transferred to joint accounts and property deeds have been changed. Claire had found a way around Mom's original intentions without technically breaking any laws. I found the bank statements from the past year. Every month there had been small transfers from Mom's checking account to what I now realized must have been the joint account with Claire. A few hundred here, 1,000 there. Never enough to trigger my attention when I was helping Mom pay her bills, but adding up to a significant amount over time. The larger transfers had happened in February, just as Claire had said, but the pattern of smaller withdrawals had been going on for much longer. There was something else in the safe, something I had never seen before. A folder with copies of financial documents, all dated within the past 18 months, power of attorney forms, account transfer authorizations, property deed transfers. Mom's signature was on all of them, but the handwriting looked different from her usual careful script. Shakier, more hesitant. These were documents signed by a woman who was scared and confused, who trusted her daughter to help her navigate complex financial decisions, who probably didn't fully understand what she was agreeing to. I sat on Mom's bed, surrounded by evidence of Claire's long-term planning, and felt something I had never experienced before toward my sister. Not just anger, but a cold, clear understanding of who she really was. This hadn't been a spontaneous decision during Mom's good week in February. This had been a systematic transfer of assets over many months, carefully timed and executed while I was focused on caregiving, while I was too tired and overwhelmed to pay attention to financial details. The worst part was how easily I had been managed. Claire's regular phone calls asking about Mom's condition, her expressions of gratitude for my sacrifice, her comments about how lucky Mom was to have me there. All of it had been intelligence gathering, making sure she stayed informed about Mom's mental state so she could time her financial maneuvers perfectly. My phone rang, Claire again. I let it go to voicemail, then listened to the message. Maggie, I'm worried about you. I know this is a shock, but I really think once you have time to process it, you'll see that Mom made the right choice. Call me back when you're ready to talk about next steps. We're family and we'll figure this out together. Next steps, as if this was something we were going to negotiate. As if I had any leverage now that everything was in her name, but I wasn't the same person who had walked out of the funeral reception yesterday. Something had cracked open inside me during that phone call, and I was seeing clearly for the first time in years. I had been the family caretaker, the reliable one, the one who could be counted on to sacrifice for everyone else's benefit. But Claire had been playing a different game entirely, and she had been playing it for a very long time. I needed help. I needed to understand exactly what had happened and what my options were. I called the family lawyer, the one who had handled Dad's estate and who had always been kind to me. His secretary said he could see me that afternoon. James Morrison had been practicing law for 40 years, and his office still had the feel of an earlier era, with law books lining the walls and a heavy wooden desk that had probably been there since the 1970s. He was one of the few people who had always called me Margaret, who treated me with the same professional respect he showed everyone else. Margaret, I'm so sorry for your loss. Your mother was a remarkable woman. He gestured for me to sit in one of the leather chairs across from his desk. How can I help you today? I told him everything. The phone call from Claire, the documents I had found, the pattern of transfers over the past year and a half. He listened without interrupting, taking notes on a yellow legal pad, his expression growing more serious as I talked. When I finished, he was quiet for a moment, reviewing his notes. Do you have copies of the documents you found? I brought them. I handed him the folder from Mom's safe. He spent several minutes examining each document, comparing signatures, checking dates. Finally, he looked up at me. Margaret, I need to ask you something, and I want you to think carefully before you answer. Over the past 2 years, as your mother's condition worsened, were there periods when she seemed confused about financial matters, times when she might have been vulnerable to persuasion? Yes, I said immediately. Especially in the last year, she would get worried about money, about being a burden. She would ask the same questions repeatedly about her accounts, about whether she had enough to pay for her care. I tried to reassure her, but the anxiety was part of the disease. He nodded. And your sister was aware of your mother's condition? I gave her regular updates. She always asked how Mom was doing, what the doctors were saying, whether she was having good days or bad days. I see. He made another note. Margaret, what you're describing sounds like financial elder abuse. The timing of these transfers, the systematic nature of them, the fact that they coincided with your mother's cognitive decline, these are all red flags. Your sister may have violated several laws. Financial elder abuse. The words hit me like cold water, but she's family, and Mom signed the papers. Being family doesn't exempt someone from abuse charges, and vulnerable adults can be coerced into signing documents they don't fully understand. He leaned forward. The question is, what do you want to do about it? This kind of case can be complex and emotionally difficult. It would mean challenging your sister directly, potentially involving law enforcement, definitely creating a permanent rift in your family. I thought about Claire's announcement at the funeral, her champagne toast while our mother's casket was still being lowered into the ground. I thought about the calculated way she had maneuvered our mother's fears and confusion to her own advantage. I thought about the years I had spent caring for Mom while Claire built her career and her relationship and her future, all the while planning to take everything that should have been shared between us. What would I need to prove? I asked. That your mother was vulnerable due to her condition, that your sister knew about and exploited that vulnerability, and that the transfers were not truly voluntary but the result of undue influence. He paused. The good news is that you have documentation. The pattern of transfers, the medical records showing your mother's diagnosis and progression, the fact that your sister wasn't present for daily care but somehow became the primary financial decision maker, all of that supports your case. How long would it take? Months, possibly longer, and it will be expensive. Your sister will hire her own attorney and she'll fight back. She might claim your mother was competent, that she made these decisions freely, that she was actually protecting her assets from Medicaid recovery. It won't be pleasant. I sat back in the leather chair, feeling the weight of the decision. I could walk away, let Claire have everything, take whatever small settlement she offered, and try to rebuild my life at 61. Or I could fight, knowing it would consume whatever energy and resources I had left, knowing it would destroy any possibility of maintaining even the pretense of a family relationship. There's something else you should know, James said quietly. Your mother updated her will 2 years ago. She came to see me not long after her diagnosis. She was very clear that she wanted her assets divided equally between her daughters, and she specifically mentioned her concerns about fairness, about making sure you were compensated for the care you were providing. She updated her will after the diagnosis? Yes, she was still competent at that time, still able to make legal decisions. She told me she was worried about the future, about what would happen to you if you continued to be her primary caregiver. She wanted to make sure you were protected. He pulled out another file. Here's a copy of that will. She also asked me to prepare a document expressing her wishes about her care and her gratitude for your sacrifice. She never filed it, but she asked me to keep it in case it was ever needed. He handed me a single page with Mom's handwriting, shaky but clearly hers. Margaret has given up so much to take care of me. I worry that she'll have nothing left when I'm gone. I want her to know that I see what she's doing, that I appreciate it, that I want her to be secure after I'm gone. She deserves half of everything, and she deserves to know that her sacrifice mattered. I read the note 3 times, tears blurring the words. Mom had seen what was happening. She had understood the cost of my caregiving, and she had tried to protect me, but somehow Claire had managed to circumvent her intentions. What happened? I asked. If Mom wanted things to be fair, if she understood what I was giving up, how did Claire manage to change everything? Undue influence, James said. Your sister identified your mother's vulnerabilities, her fear of being a burden, her confusion about financial matters, her desire to protect both of her daughters, and she exploited them. She probably presented herself as the solution to your mother's worries. Let me take care of the complicated financial stuff so Margaret doesn't have to worry about it. Let me make sure everything is set up to protect both of you. And your mother, in her compromised state, saw it as a kindness. I folded Mom's note carefully and put it in my purse. I want to fight this. Are you sure? It's going to be difficult, Margaret. Your sister seems to have been planning this for a long time. She'll have arguments, explanations, possibly even recordings of conversations with your mother. She'll portray herself as the responsible daughter who stepped in to help with complex financial planning while you were focused on caregiving. She might even suggest that your mother didn't trust you with financial decisions. Let her try. The words came out harder than I had intended. I know what I did for 3 years. I know who was there every day, who held Mom's hand through the panic attacks, who cleaned up after her accidents, who researched every possible treatment and care option. Claire can tell whatever story she wants, but I know the truth. All right then, James opened a fresh file. Let's start with a forensic examination of your mother's finances. We'll need to establish the timeline of transfers, document your mother's cognitive state at the time of each transaction, and gather evidence of your sister's knowledge of her condition. It's going to be a lot of work, but I think we have a good case. As I walked out of James's office that afternoon, I felt something I hadn't experienced in years. Not anger exactly, but a clear sense of purpose. For too long, I had been accommodating, understanding, willing to be the one who sacrificed for family harmony. But there was a difference between sacrifice and exploitation, between being generous and being a victim. Claire called that evening while I was packing some of Mom's belongings. I let it ring 4 times before answering. Maggie, thank goodness, I've been so worried. You hung up so abruptly this morning, and I know how overwhelming this must be for you. I've been thinking about what you told me, I said carefully. Good, I really think once you have time to process everything, you'll see that Mom made the right decisions. She was always so smart about planning ahead. I have some questions about the timeline. You said she called you last February to help with financial planning? That's right. She was having one of her clear periods, and she said she had been worrying about her affairs. She wanted to make sure everything was organized properly. And you flew in immediately? Well, within a few days, I had to rearrange some work obligations, but of course Mom was the priority. Claire's voice had that warm, family-focused tone she used when she was establishing her credentials as a caring daughter. That must have been expensive, flying out on short notice. Oh, I didn't mind. Mom was worth it. Besides, I knew it was important to handle these things while she was still competent to make decisions. Competent? I let the word hang in the air for a moment. Claire, do you remember what Mom's condition was like last February, what the doctor had told us about her progression? There was a pause. She was having some difficulties, obviously, but she still had good days. The day we went to the bank was definitely one of her good days. According to Dr. Peterson's notes, Mom was in the moderate stage of Alzheimer's by February. She was having significant memory issues, confusion about time and place, difficulty with complex tasks. The doctor had specifically mentioned that she shouldn't make major financial decisions without oversight. Another pause, longer this time. I don't know what notes you're looking at, Maggie, but Mom seemed perfectly clear to me that day. She knew exactly what she wanted to do. I'm sure she did. The question is whether what she wanted was really her own idea or whether someone helped her understand what she should want. I don't like what you're implying. Claire's voice had gotten cooler. I would never take advantage of Mom. Everything I did was to protect her and to make things easier for both of us. Both of us, but somehow you ended up with $230,000 and the house, and I ended up with nothing. That doesn't seem like both of us received equal protection. Maggie, you're being emotional. I know you're grieving, but you can't let that cloud your judgment about what Mom wanted. She specifically chose me to handle her finances because she knew I had more experience with investments and legal matters. She wasn't trying to cut you out, she was trying to make sure everything was handled properly. By someone who visited twice a year, That's not fair. I stayed in constant contact with mom. I called every week. I sent flowers, gifts, care packages. Just because I wasn't physically there doesn't mean I wasn't involved in her life. You're right, I said. You were very involved. You were involved enough to know exactly when she was most vulnerable, when she was most likely to agree to financial arrangements she didn't fully understand. You were involved enough to time your visits perfectly to know exactly what to say to convince her that signing over her assets was actually a kindness to me. I'm not going to listen to this. Claire's voice was sharp now. You're upset and you're looking for someone to blame, but I didn't do anything wrong. Mom made her own choices, and if you can't accept that, it's your problem, not mine. You're right about one thing. I am upset. I'm upset that while I was helping mom shower and managing her medications and researching memory care facilities, you were researching a state law and planning how to circumvent her will. I'm upset that you used mom's fear of being a burden to convince her to sign documents that made sure she would never be a burden to you, while guaranteeing that I would end up with nothing after 3 years of caregiving. That's enough, Maggie. I tried to be patient with you, but I'm not going to stand here and be accused of stealing from our own mother. If you want to contest mom's decisions, if you want to drag our family through some ugly legal battle, that's your choice. But don't expect me to apologize for helping mom organize her affairs while she was still able to make decisions. I'll see you in court, Claire. What? I said I'll see you in court. I've hired a lawyer. We're going to examine every one of those transfers, every document mom signed, every conversation you had with her about her finances. We're going to let a judge decide whether a woman with moderate Alzheimer's was really capable of making complex financial decisions, especially when those decisions benefited only one daughter while leaving the other with nothing. The silence stretched out so long that I thought Claire had hung up. Finally, she spoke, and her voice was different now, harder. You have no idea what you're starting, Maggie. I have every legal document, every bank record, every piece of evidence showing that mom made these decisions voluntarily, and I have a lot more money than you do to fight this. Are you really prepared to spend the next 2 years of your life and whatever savings you have left on a case you can't win? We'll see. Fine. But don't come crying to me when you've wasted everything on lawyer fees and you still end up with nothing. And don't expect any family relationship with me after this. You're choosing to destroy our family over money. No, Claire, you destroyed our family when you decided to steal our mother's assets while I was caring for her. I'm just choosing to fight back. I hung up and sat in the quiet of mom's kitchen, feeling strangely calm. For the first time in 3 years, I wasn't wondering what Claire needed, what would make everyone happy, how to keep the peace. I was wondering what I needed, what was fair, what was right. The next few weeks passed in a blur of legal consultations, document review, and forensic financial analysis. James had been right, Claire had been planning for a long time. The pattern of transfers was even more systematic than I had initially realized. Small amounts at first, when mom was still relatively sharp, then larger sums as her condition worsened and she became more dependent on others for financial management. But we had evidence too. Medical records documenting mom's cognitive decline, testimony from her doctors about her capacity to make complex decisions, and most importantly, mom's own written words expressing her wishes for fair treatment of both daughters. The note I had found in her safe was just one of several documents she had left with James, evidence that she had been thinking clearly about her legacy when she wasn't under Claire's influence. The forensic accountant James hired found other irregularities. Payments from mom's accounts to Claire's credit cards, transfers that coincided with Claire's major purchases, a new car, a down payment on her condo, expensive vacations. All explained away as helping mom with financial management or gifts mom insisted on giving, but adding up to a pattern of financial exploitation that had been going on for years, not just the past 18 months. Claire hired a prominent law firm and fought back hard, just as James had predicted. Her lawyers argued that mom had been competent, that the transfers were voluntary, that Claire had actually protected mom's assets from potential Medicaid recovery. They painted me as the bitter, ungrateful daughter who had moved in with mom expecting to inherit everything and was now angry that mom had made different choices. It was ugly, exhausting, and expensive. But something had changed in me during those months of legal preparation. I wasn't the accommodating sister anymore, the one who avoided conflict for the sake of family harmony. I was someone who had been wronged, who had documentation and evidence and legal standing to fight back. The breakthrough came when James's team found recorded conversations on Claire's phone, conversations she had apparently forgotten about when she turned over her communications with mom as part of discovery. In one recording, Claire could be heard coaching mom through the language she should use when talking to the bank manager, reminding her to say that the transfers were her own idea, that she understood what she was signing. Just remember, Mom, you want to make sure everything is simplified for Maggie. You don't want her to have to deal with complicated legal stuff when you're gone. This way, everything will be clean and easy for her. And Mom's voice, confused and hesitant, but I want to be fair to both girls. I want Maggie to have something after all she's done. And Claire, smooth and reassuring, this is being fair, Mom. This way Maggie can focus on healing instead of worrying about financial details. Trust me, this is what's best for everyone. When James played that recording in his office, I finally understood the full scope of what Claire had done. She hadn't just taken advantage of Mom's confusion, she had systematically undermined Mom's own expressed wishes while convincing her that the manipulation was actually kindness. 3 days before we were scheduled to go to trial, Claire's lawyers called James to discuss a settlement. They were offering me $100,000 and the contents of the house in exchange for dropping the lawsuit. It was less than half of what should have been mine, but it was something. What do you think? James asked me. I thought about the months of legal preparation, the stress and expense of a trial, the possibility that a judge might rule against me despite all our evidence. I thought about starting over at 61 with some money in the bank versus starting over with nothing but the satisfaction of having fought. Counter offer, I said. 150,000 plus she pays all my legal fees. She won't agree to the legal fees. Then we go to trial, James smiled. I'll make the call. Claire's lawyers came back with 125,000 and a split of legal fees. I accepted. It wasn't full justice, but it was acknowledgement that I had been wronged, that Claire's actions had been questionable enough that her own lawyers didn't want to risk a trial. The settlement conference was held in a conference room at James's office. Claire attended with her 2 lawyers, looking perfectly put together in a navy blue suit and pearl earrings, the picture of a successful professional woman. I wore the black dress I had bought for Mom's funeral. We sat across from each other at a polished conference table with lawyers on both sides reviewing the final documents. Claire didn't look at me directly, but I could see her hands shaking slightly as she signed the papers. When it was over, when the checks had been written and the agreements had been signed and the lawyers had shaken hands, Claire finally looked at me. I hope you're satisfied, she said quietly. No, I said, I'm not satisfied. I'll never be satisfied that you used our mother's illness to steal from her and from me, but I'm done fighting you and I'm done pretending we're family. We are family, Maggie. We're the only family each other has left. Family doesn't do what you did. Family doesn't exploit each other's trust and love and sacrifice. You made your choice when you decided Mom's confusion was an opportunity instead of a tragedy. Claire gathered her purse and her papers. You'll regret this someday. When you realize how alone you are, when you understand that money doesn't replace the people who knew you your whole life, you'll regret destroying the only family relationship you had left. Maybe, I said, but I'll never regret fighting for what was right. She left without saying goodbye. I haven't heard from her since. That was 8 months ago. I used the settlement money to buy a small condo in a town about an hour from where Mom lived, close enough to visit her grave but far enough to feel like a fresh start. I've been volunteering at the local library, helping other older adults navigate technology and paperwork. I've joined a book club, started taking yoga classes, begun dating a retired teacher I met at the community center. It's not the life I had planned when I was 58 and thinking about retirement, but it's my life, chosen by me, built on my own terms. I wake up in the morning knowing that I fought for myself, that I didn't just accept being taken advantage of because it was easier than causing conflict. Sometimes I think about what Claire said about family being the people who knew you your whole life. But I've learned that family is supposed to be the people who protect you, who care about your welfare, who don't see your love and sacrifice as weaknesses to be exploited. Sometimes the people who share your blood are just people who happen to share your blood. I think Mom would understand. I think she would be proud that I didn't just accept being cheated, that I fought for the fairness she had wanted for both of us. I think she would be glad that I'm building a life based on my own worth instead of waiting for other people to decide what I deserve. The morning light through my kitchen window catches the small ceramic rooster I took from Mom's collection, the only thing Claire didn't fight me for. It sits on my windowsill now, a reminder that some things are worth more than money, worth more than keeping the peace, worth more than avoiding conflict with people who don't have your best interests at heart. If this story touched something in you, I hope you'll share your thoughts. Sometimes we need to hear that others have faced similar battles, that we're not alone in learning to fight for ourselves, even when it's difficult, even when it changes everything we thought we knew about family and loyalty and love.